Hello and welcome to this introduction to IELTS, brought to you by Learning English 365. My name is Donna, and over the next hour or so, I'm going to be giving you more information about the IELTS test, whether that's because you are thinking about taking the test or you've already decided to take it and are beginning your preparation for it. There's useful information for all of you. In the session today, we're going to be learning more about the test, what it is and how it's scored, and how it can help you, whatever reason you're moving to an English-speaking country for. Let's have a little closer look at what the IELTS test is. Well, IELTS stands for the International English Language Test, and as you can see on the screen, it's jointly owned by organisations in the UK and Australia. It's designed to help you work, study or migrate to English-speaking countries. During the test itself, your listening, reading, writing and speaking skills in English will all be examined. There's no pass or fail in the IELTS exam. Instead, it's graded on a scale from 1 to 9, where a score of 1 means the test taker has virtually no knowledge of the language, up to a maximum of 9, which means the test taker is an expert in English and has a level of proficiency akin to a native speaker. On the screen now, you have a table that shows you the band scores, the skills level applicable to that band score, and then a description of what that skill level means. And these are the official IELTS bands, skill levels, and descriptions. Clearly, the higher you can score in your IELTS, the better understanding and an ability to communicate in English you have. You'll find that each immigration body or university or workplace will have very specific IELTS score requirements. So the score you'll need will depend on what you're looking to do in the country you're moving to, whether that's work or study or to live. And as you can see, we've got 1 as the non-user at the bottom, and then around 5, we've got a modest user, 6, a competent user, up to the expert user at 9. So very helpful information if you're looking to prepare for your test. So why do the IELTS then? Why do people take the test? Well, as we've already said, it's accepted as evidence of English language skills if you're moving to an English-speaking country. Each country has slightly different requirements or different approaches. So let's have a look at each one in a little bit more detail. For Australia, you'll find that the IELTS is accepted by the Department of Home Affairs for many types of visas. And it's also accepted for permanent residency in Australia. The minimum IELTS score for Australian immigration is a 6. Next one is Canada. If you're applying for a work visa or for permanent residency in Canada, it's likely that they'll ask you to present evidence of your English language proficiency. It's always important in Canada to contact the organisation you're dealing with for the minimum score required, as this does differ depending on your individual circumstances. New Zealand, well, Immigration New Zealand asks for IELTS as evidence of your skills for many different types of visa. and that includes those for skilled migrant visas, investors, and residency. The minimum score for for New Zealand immigration is a 6.5. It's slightly different to the Australia and Canada. United Kingdom. Evidence of English language ability is a requirement for all those applying to settle permanently in the UK. And this is sometimes also referred to as leave to remain or long residence. IELTS minimum score requirements vary in the UK from a minimum of 4 up to 7. So again, it's always important to check with your organisation or your institution to see what the particular requirements are for your circumstances. And finally, we have the United States of America. So not traditionally an IELTS country, but these days more than 3,400 American institutions accept IELTS as proof of English language proficiency for those who wish to study or work in the USA. So again, it's worth speaking to your organisation or institution to find out what their requirements are and whether they will accept the IELTS as proof of your proficiency before you go ahead. Okay, what are the IELTS test types? There are 2 types. There's the IELTS academic and there's the IELTS general language. As the name suggests, the IELTS academic test is suitable for those wanting to study in an English-speaking university for higher education. And you can also take the IELTS academic for professional registration purposes. So maybe you already have your degree in your home country and you want it to be recognised in an English-speaking country. The IELTS can help you to do that. The IELTS academic test measures if you're ready to begin studying in English. It features vocabulary that is familiar within an academic setting. So if you're wanting to move to an English-speaking country to study at university, then you should take the IELTS academic test as a general rule. The IELTS general training test is suitable for those applying to study below degree level. This includes an English-speaking school or college, and it can also be taken for work experience or other employment training. It's also required for migration to Australia, Canada, New Zealand, and the UK. Again, as the name suggests, the test features everyday English language situations. So it tests the language skills that you would need in social and workplace environments. Again, the general golden rule is to check which test is required by your institution, by your organisation before you book your test, to make sure you're doing the right one. The last thing you want to do is do the test and then find out that you should have done the other one. As we said at the beginning, the IELTS tests your ability in listening, speaking, reading, and writing. All test takers, whether you're doing the academic or the general training, take the same listening and speaking tests. But there are different reading and writing tests. according to whether you're doing the academic test or the general training test. Generally, the listening, reading and writing sections of the tests, whether it's academic or general, are completed on the same day with no real breaks in between them. And the speaking section can be completed on a different day and maybe up to a week before or after the other tests. The total test time across those 2 days is less than 3 hours. It's 2 hours and 45 minutes. Okay, let's have a look now at each of the individual skills tests in a little bit more detail. So we're going to start with the listening. Okay? And as we've already said, the listening test is the same, whether you're doing the academic test or the general training. Here's the important points you need to know. The test lasts approximately 30 minutes, and you will also get an extra 10 minutes to transfer your answers to the answer booklet. You will listen to 4 recordings of native English speakers, and each recording will have 10 questions, usually. In the first recording, you're likely to listen to a conversation between 2 people set in an everyday situation. For example, a customer might call a company to find out specific information about a product or service. In the second section, you'll hear a monologue, again set in an everyday situation. For example, a speaker gives a short presentation on a service. In the third section, you'll hear a conversation between people, usually up to 4 people, and that will be set in an educational or training context. So you may hear a university tutor discussing an assignment with his students. And in the final listening, you'll hear a monologue on an academic subject, for example, a university lecture. The recordings will include a range of accents: British, American, Australian, New Zealand, and Canadian. So it's very important when you're doing your preparation for the test that you listen to a range of different voices and a range of accents, so you get used to hearing the different ways that English speakers can speak. Now, these are the very important warning points, the things that you really must remember about the listening test. You will only hear the recording once. It's very important. There's no second chance with the IELTS listening test. You'll only hear it once, each recording once. There's a variety of question types used. You may be asked to do multiple choice questions. You may need to match information. You may need to label something, or you may be asked to complete information in a table or to complete a sentence. And each question is equally weighted. So each question is worth 1 mark. But, and this is a theme throughout the tests, you will be penalised for poor grammar and spelling. So you need to be accurate throughout the test. Yes, we are testing listening here, but you also need to be able to write accurately. Let's have a look at an example question. This is the type of thing that you might face in the listening test part 1. You will always have time to look at the questions before you have to answer the questions. So use this time wisely. So here we can see that we have a customer quotation form from a shipping agency. And as we can see, we've got some information already given on the form. And we can see a number of questions. We've got 1 through to 8. Each question or each bit of missing information is indicated on the form. So let's have a look at the form and see what information is missing so we know what we need to listen out for when we listen to the recording. So number 1, for example, we can see that relates to the person's name. And we have a first name there, we have Jacob. So we are listening, the missing information is the surname, the person's family name. Number 2, we can see that it's an address that's being asked for here and there's some missing information. So we know that we need to listen for an address. And 3, we know a postcode is missing. So we will listen for the postcode. For 4 and 5, we can see that this relates to the size of the container. And we've got the length there, and we're being asked to complete the width and the height. So again, we know we're looking for measurements. 6 and 7 relates to the contents of the container. And in number 8, we can see that we're looking for the cost or the value, the total value of the items that are inside the container. So we're looking for a number, a price. We're going to listen to part of the recording, but before we do that, I'd also like to draw your attention to the instructions. Again, another golden rule of the IELTS, always read the question. It says, write no more than 3 words and or a number for each answer. So here, we're not looking for full sentences. We just need the words and or a number written down. This isn't the time to show off. You are following the instructions. And if you wrote more than 3 words and or a number in one of your answers, then the answer would be marked wrong because you've not followed the instructions. So it's always, always important that you read the question carefully to see what is required. Let's listen to the recording now. We've gone through the information that you are likely, that you are going to hear, and the information that's missing from the form. Can you complete the form?
You will hear a telephone conversation between a customer and an agent at a company which ships large boxes overseas.
Good morning, Packham's shipping agents. Can I help you?
Oh, yes. I'm ringing to make inquiries about sending a large box, a container back home to Kenya from the UK.
Yes, of course. Would you like me to try and find some quotations for you?
Yes, that'd be great. Thank you.
Well, first of all, I need a few details from you.
Fine.
Can I take your name?
It's Jacob Mkere.
Can you spell your surname, please?
Yes, it's Mkere.
Is that M for mother?
Yes.
Thank you. And you say that you will be sending the box to Kenya?
That's right.
And where would you like the box picked up from?
From college, if possible.
Yes, of course. I'll take down the address now.
It's Westall College.
Is that Westall? T-A-L-L,
Yes, college.
Westall College. And where's that?
It's Downlands Road in Bristol.
Oh, yes, I know it. And the postcode?
It's BS8 9PU.
Right. And I need to know the size.
Yes, I've measured it carefully and it's 1.5 meters long,
Right.
0.75 meters wide,
Okay.
and it's 0.5 meters high or deep.
Great. So I'll calculate the volume in a moment and get some quotes for that. But first, can you tell me, very generally, what will be in the box?
Yes, there's mostly clothes
Okay.
and there's some books.
Okay, good. Um, Anything else?
Yes, there's also some toys.
Okay, and what is the total value, do you think, of the contents?
Well, the main costs are the clothes and the books. They'll be about £1,500. But then the toys are about another 200. So I'd put down £1,700.
Okay, there you go. They're the answer to all the questions. Before we move on, two things just to bear in mind. You will have realised that the questions, the information to complete each question was given in order. Okay, so the information for number 1 came first, number 2 second, number 3 third, etc. So you didn't have to keep moving up and down the form. And the other important point is that 2 of the words, the name of the college and the person's surname, were spelt out during the recording. We've already said that if you spell things incorrectly, you will be penalised. But if you have a spelling on a listening test, if a word is spelled out for you, it is essential that you get it correct. That's part of the listening test. Can you record something accurately that has been spelt out for you? So if you didn't spell Jacob's surname or the name of his college correctly, then that answer would be marked wrong. So very important points to remember. Okay, let's move on to the speaking test now. Now, as we said, the speaking test is also the same test, regardless of which IELTS you're taking, academic or general training. Let's have a look at some of the key features of the speaking test. It lasts between 11 and 14 minutes. And it's got 3 parts to it. In the first part, the examiner will ask you some general questions about yourself and your life, your family, your work, your studies, your hobbies. So all kinds of things that you should know. And partly this is designed to relax you. It's very nerve-wracking doing any kind of speaking exam. So this helps you to relax a little bit. And you would expect this part of the exam to last between 4 and 5 minutes. In the second part, the examiner will give you a card with a topic written on it, and you will be asked to prepare a mini presentation on that topic. You will have 1 minute to prepare, and you'll be asked to speak for up to 2 minutes. And once you've finished, the examiner will ask you 1 or 2 short questions about that topic. The third part of the test links to the second part. And in this part, the examiner will ask you further, more detailed questions about the topic that you prepared in part 2. And this part of the test will also last between 4 and 5 minutes. very important now. What are the examiners looking for in the speaking test? Well, firstly, they're looking for fluency and coherence. And what does that mean? Well, that relates to your rate of speech and your continuity of speech. So are your sentences logical? Do you use connectors? Do you use pronouns and conjunctions within and between sentences? Does your language flow when you're speaking in a natural way? Lexical resource. Well, here we're looking at your vocabulary range and the precision with which your meanings and attitudes can be expressed. This isn't necessarily about using all those big words that you've learned, but it is about using a wide range of words and using them in an appropriate way, using them accurately. Grammatical range and accuracy again. So, what's the length and complexity of your spoken sentences? Are you continually speaking in very short sentences, or are you also adding in more complex sentences using subordinate clauses, for example, and showing a range of features in your spoken language? Again, you may make errors in your grammar when you're speaking, but do those errors reflect or impact on the meaning? Will the listener still understand what you're talking about, even if you make one or two errors in your grammar? And pronunciation. And that's pronouncing the words correctly. And here it's a little word to ease any nerves you may have about pronunciation. There are differences in pronunciation, particularly between British and American speakers. Okay, we're all aware of that. And any recognized pronunciation is okay for the IELTS. This isn't about making everyone sound British or American or Australian even. So any differences in pronunciation of individual words are accepted in the IELTS test. So don't worry about that. Here's an example of a part 1 question. Yeah, as we said, this is very much about the examiner finding out a little bit more about you. And we can see what the questions are. Okay, so here the examiner is going to talk about hometown or village of the person. And we've got some bullet points there with some specific questions. And then the second part of it is to talk about accommodation. What type of accommodation does the person live in and how long they've lived there, etc. We're going to listen to someone taking part of this test so you can see what answers they give. Let's take a listen now.
Now, in this first part, I'd like to ask you some more questions about yourself. Okay. Let's talk about your hometown or village. What kind of place is it?
It's quite a small village, about 20 kilometers from Zurich.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very quiet, and we have only two little shops because most of the people work in Zurich or are orientated to the city.
What's the most interesting part of this place, the village?
On the top of a hill, we have a little castle, which is very old and quite well known in Switzerland.
What kind of jobs do people in the village do?
We have some farmers in the village, as well as people who work in Zurich as bankers or journalists, or there are also teachers and some doctors, or some medicines.
Right. Would you say it's a good place to live?
Yes, although it is very quiet, people are friendly,
Mm-hmm.
and I would say it's a good place to live there, yes.
Let's move on to talk about accommodation. Tell me about the kind of accommodation you live in.
So there you go. The important points to take from what we've just heard is that the test taker didn't just answer in very simple short sentences. For each question, he expanded his answer. For the last bullet, for example, he didn't just say yes or no to the question, would you say it's a good place to live? You know, he didn't wait for the examiner to ask why. He just says, yes, I think so, and then developed his answer. And it's very important that you also do that when you are answering questions. What other relevant information can you give in reply to the question? And the candidate, the test taker, also, we heard lots of different words that he used to link his ideas, to connect his sentences together. So he didn't just talk in very short, staccato sentences. He actually used connector words such as well as to join his ideas together. So have a think. How would you answer those questions if you were asked them in the exam?
Now, in this...
Let's move on. So now we're going on to look at the reading. And there is a difference in the reading test, depending whether you're taking the general training or the academic training. So let's do the general training first. Let's look at some of the key points about it. Okay, so it lasts 60 minutes in total. There are 3 sections designed to test a wide range of your reading ability, and there's a total of 40 questions. So the first question is a social survival section, and it may contain 2 or 3 short texts or several shorter texts. The texts are relevant to your basic survival in English. So you'll probably be asked to retrieve and provide general factual information, for example, from a notice or an advertisement or a timetable. Okay, those are the kinds of materials that will be used in section 1. In section 2, we're talking about workplace survival, and that's usually got 2 texts. And as you would, as the name suggests, workplace context here. So we might be faced with the job descriptions or contracts or staff development and training materials. So any of those kinds of things. And lastly, it's a general reading and consists of 1 long text. And that is likely to have a more complex structure, because here the emphasis will be on a descriptive and instructive text. So you may be faced with a newspaper article or a magazine, or maybe even some fictional or non-fictional extracts from a book. Okay. So you can see the difference between the types of text that you will face. Important. Each question you come to answer it is worth 1 mark, but again you will be penalised for poor spelling and grammar. So here again we are reading, we're not writing, but you will still be penalised if you don't write accurately. And here we have the variety of questions that you may face in the reading test. So you might be asked to do multiple choice, identifying information, some matching, some completion of sentences or summaries, or there might be some short answer questions. So this is about testing your ability to read for main ideas, reading for gist, being able to extract information from something, whether that's a magazine or an advertisement, whether you can understand a logical argument or recognise a writer's point of view. So all of those kinds of things are being tested in the reading exam. And there we have, read the question. Yet again, it's read the question. There may be restrictions on the word count, okay, the number of words or numbers allowed in reply to the question. If it says answering one word or answer 2 or 3 and no more, then you must follow those instructions, because failure to do so, if you go over the word count, the answer will be marked wrong, even if the answer is right in essence. Okay, if you've not followed the instructions, you will be penalised. Okay, here's an example of a typical reading test in the general training IELTS. So here you are being asked to identify information. Okay, you've got a series of statements and you're being asked to say whether those statements are true or false, or the information wasn't given in the text that you had. And here you would have a text which gives information about a London to Brighton bike ride. Okay, so it's an organised bike ride, and there's a leaflet giving more information about this organised bike ride, all different aspects of it. So you're asked to read it, and then you're asked to answer those questions. That's a typical type of question. So for the academic, reading academic, again, this is 60 minutes. And you will have 3 reading passages with a variety of questions using a number of task types. And the text becomes progressively more difficult here. So again, these questions are designed to test a wide range of reading skills. So reading for gist, reading for main ideas, reading for detail, skimming, understanding logical arguments, and recognizing different opinions, attitudes, and purpose. What's the purpose of the text? Why did the writer write this? The 3 long texts will come from books or journals, magazines and newspapers, and have been written for a non-specialist audience. And that's an important thing for you to remember. Okay, don't worry. Yes, it's an academic test, but your academic knowledge is not being tested in itself. It's your English language. So, don't worry if you are an arts graduate, that you will have something very scientific that you would not even understand in your own language. Even in the academic test, all the reading texts will be aimed at a non-specialist audience. Okay, so you don't need to have knowledge of the subject matter in order to be able to answer the questions. They're the kinds of things, they're issues which will be appropriate and accessible to test takers entering undergraduate or postgraduate studies. And you might find the passages are written in a variety of styles, narrative or argumentative, for example. There's not one set way of doing this. At least one of the texts will contain some detailed logical arguments. Okay, and the text may not just be words. Okay, you may also find diagrams or graphs or illustrations as well. And if there is a particular technical term that is in the text or on a diagram, the meaning of it will be given in a glossary. Okay, if it's not a word that is normally understood, it is a very technical, specific, specialist term, then that term will be explained for you. So what's important to know? Again, always, each question is worth 1 mark, but you will be penalised for poor spelling and grammar. Okay, and this is the case throughout all of the test. And those are the question types, very the same really as the general test reading. Okay, again, these tests are designed to test your wide range of skills. So can you understand specific points? Do you understand an overall meaning of something? Can you scan for specific information? Can you recognize relationships and connections between facts in a text? Okay, can you summarize what's in front of you? So all of those kinds of things will be tested here in lots of different texts, lots of different ways. And again, read the question. Okay. The instructions will always make it clear how many words or numbers test takers should use in their answers. So no more than 3 words, 1 word only, no more than 2 words and or a number. Okay, and it will be given in capital letters. So make sure you read it and you stick to the instructions. Maybe if you think the answer you want to give goes beyond those instructions, then maybe your answer isn't correct. Okay, so the instructions are there for a reason. So read them and follow them. If you don't follow them, you will lose the marks. Okay, this is a typical kind of question from a reading academic test. So here we're being asked to match features. Okay, so we've got some items, 7 to 10, and we've got groups of people who invented or used them first, A to E. Okay, so we need to read the text we have before us and match them. And the text that we're being asked to read is about the development of rockets. The important point to note here is we have 4 items, but we have 5 choices who first invented or used by. And again, this is often a feature, that it won't match. Okay, there's an extra groups of people here. Okay, so one of them won't be used. Okay, so it's not as easy as just, well, if I can match 3 of them, I'll obviously get the 4th one. Okay, no, not necessarily. Not necessarily. Let's move on to the writing. Again, the writing is a different test, whether you're doing general training or academic. And we're going to start again with general training. Take 60 minutes to do this part of the test, and you'll have 2 tasks to complete. Task 1 is a situation that you'll be presented with, and you'll be asked to write a letter requesting information or explaining a situation. You should write at least 150 words for task 1. And task 2 is slightly different in that you'll be asked to write an essay in response to a point of view or an argument or a problem. You can introduce your own personal experience into that usually. And the word count for task 2 is at least 250 words. So 150 for the first task, 250 for the second. So these are the important things to remember about the writing test. Answers must be written in full. No notes, no bullet points. You must write in full sentences. The assessment of task 2 carries more weight in marking than task 1. So up to now, each question has had an equal marking weight, not here. Okay. And both tasks are assessed on different things. Okay. Task achievement, coherence, lexical resource, back to vocabulary, and grammatical range and accuracy. Obviously, of course, now we're in the writing test. Task achievement. But this assesses how appropriately the response, your answer, meets the requirements set out in the task, using the minimum of 150 words. Coherence and cohesion. This assesses the overall clarity and fluency of your writing. How did you organize your answer? How did you link information and ideas? Did you use paragraphs? Did you use linking words? Is it logical? Is your writing done in a logical sequence? Did you use pronouns and conjunctions? So you're not just a series of short sentences, but you linked appropriate ones together. You didn't keep repeating the same proper nouns. You use pronouns instead. Lexical resource, as we've seen, is about vocabulary range. And again, it's about not only just using lots of big words, but using them in an accurate way and appropriately. And not repeating the same words. Often we may be repeating the same ideas, but we use different words, we use different language to explain ourselves. So make sure that you do that in your writing as well. And of course, grammatical range and accuracy. Is your grammar accurate? And did you use a range of it? Did you mix things up? You know, did you use complex sentences as well as simple sentences? Task 2 also requires you to formulate and develop a position in relation to a question or a statement, as we've seen. And you'll need to make sure that any ideas you give are supported by evidence. And as I said, you can draw on your own experience in giving examples for this part of the test. And your responses must be at least 250 words in length for the second task, as we've seen. And if you go beneath the minimum for either task 1 or task 2, you will be penalised. Okay. And I think it's also worth mentioning as well that task 1 doesn't carry as many points as task 2. So manage your time appropriately. Okay, don't write 500 words for task 1, okay, to give yourself less time to do task 2. You know, manage it so that you give an appropriate amount of time for task 2. You have enough time to do it properly. You won't get extra marks for going way above the word count, okay, on either task 1 or task 2. It's better to have 150 words or 250 words that are 100% accurate than have 400 words or 210 words that are full of mistakes. Okay, so be very careful about that. And here's an example of a task 1 task. Okay, and it's suggesting you spend 20 minutes on the task. And here we have a scenario has been given about some problems with some living arrangements. Okay, you share a room with another student and you're being asked to write a letter to the accommodation officer explaining the situation, what the problems are and why you're having difficulties and what outcome that you're looking for. And it starts the letter off for you, dear sir or madam. So have a think. How would you write that? How would you write that letter? So moving on to the academic test then for writing. Again, you have 60 minutes and you also have 2 tasks. And in task 1, you'll be given a graph or a table, something like that, and you'll be asked to describe or summarize or explain the information in front of you in your own words. So you may be asked to explain data or describe the stages of a process or how something works or describe something. In essence, you'll be asked to describe some visual information in your own words. That's really what's being asked of you. And again, it's about 150 words maximum, 150 words minimum, sorry, for this this task. And again, in about 20 minutes. And in task 2, you'll be asked to respond to a point of view or an argument or a problem. And again, this will be like 250 words minimum. The topics here will be of general interest to people entering undergraduate or postgraduate studies or those seeking that professional registration. And you have to do both tasks, of course. So what's important here? Again, you will be penalised if your answers are too short. 150 words minimum in task 1 and 250 words in task 2. The assessment of task 2 carries more weight in marking than task 1. Hence, there are more words in task 2, and it's recommended you spend much longer doing task 2 than task 1. And again, both tasks are achieved on the are assessed on those 4 criterion: task achievement, coherence and cohesion, your vocabulary and your grammatical range and accuracy. So again, have you answered the question? Task achievement. Is your writing clear and is it fluent? Is it well organised? Is it logical? Okay, do you link your ideas between one paragraph and another? You know, how do you present your information? Are you using a wide range of vocabulary in an appropriate and accurate way? And does it actually fit the task that you're being asked to do? And how are you writing your sentences? You know, are you mixing your sentences between simple and complex? Can you introduce clauses? Do you use a range of tenses appropriately? Do you introduce the passive voice? All those kinds of things. Here's a typical example of a task 1 in the academic IELTS test. Okay, so we've got a chart that shows men and women in further education in Britain in 3 time periods, and whether they were studying full or part-time. And you're being asked to summarise the information that's before you. Okay, so can you spot the trends? Can you see the main features? What are the comparisons between men and women? What are the differences between full and part-time between the genders? How have things changed over time? Okay. So lots of information in front of you, and you're being asked to explain what you can see in essence. And it's suggested that you would spend about 20 minutes on this. And you don't really want to spend longer because you obviously have the more complex tasks to do next. Okay. Okay, moving on then to have a look at the ways you can take the IELTS. You can do it on paper, and this test, the old-fashioned way, I suppose, is you sit at a desk with the question papers and answer sheets for the reading, listening and writing tests in an official test centre. And you will write your answers on the sheet, either in pen or pencil. And then the speaking test will be carried out face-to-face with an examiner. Or you can take it on computer. And this test obviously requires you to sit your reading, listening and writing tests in front of a computer with the questions presented on the screen. Okay, but again, this is at an official IELTS test centre. The speaking test isn't on a computer though, and you will still do it face-to-face with a trained examiner. Whether you do the tests on paper or on computer, all aspects of the test are identical. Okay, the content and the marking and the timings. There is a slight difference on the computer listening test because on the paper test, you are given some extra time to transfer your answers onto the answer sheet. And you don't need to do that in the listening test. It's redundant. It's not necessary because you'll be answering your questions directly on the computer. But that is the only small difference between taking the test on paper or on computer. Not all countries have the option for computer-based tests at the moment. So you will need to check if that's something you're interested in and whether that's on offer where you live. Before the start of each part of the test, you will have some time to review the questions, and at the end, you'll have some time to review the answers. Okay. The IELTS indicator. So this is something that has become necessary in this pandemic world that we live in. Okay, so right now, with lots of countries across the world under restrictions, IELTS have introduced some changes into the IELTS test process. IELTS Indicator is an online test that you can use to safely demonstrate your language skills during the shutdown. And it's not been possible for people to take their tests in an official test centre. And obviously this differs from country to country. So again, it really does depend on your situation in your country, in your area. And this indicator is an online test. It's once a week. It covers the 4 skills. It gives an indicative score, but it's not a substitute for the in-person IELTS. Okay, and that's very important. The online test looks at the listening, reading, and writing. And the speaking test is done via a video call with a qualified and trained examiner. Okay, so you do all of it online, basically. Once testing resumes, your university or education provider may ask you to take an in-person IELTS, even if you've taken this IELTS indicator. And that's why we say it's not a substitute. But that's something that you would need to discuss with your university or your training institution. And importantly, it's not accepted for migration to Australia, Canada, or New Zealand. So it may be accepted by universities, but it won't be accepted for migration to those countries. It's really important before you book this or you decide to take the IELTS indicator that you check with your university whether it's an acceptable way for them to test your language proficiency. So, in summary, what have we looked at today? We've looked at what the IELTS is. We've looked at how it can help you. We've looked at the skills it tests, and we've also looked at some example questions to get you thinking about the types of things you will face in the test. Ways you can take the test, including in this this world that we currently live in? And what will your next steps be? Well, you can look out for more online help in how to prepare for the listening, speaking, reading and writing skills. Learning 365 will be issuing new videos which look at those individual tests in more detail. And if you need any more help from us, our contact details are now on screen. Thank you very much for watching today. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you found some useful information and some useful hints and tips. And I hope to see you all again soon. Thank you for joining me. Goodbye.